Hi, welcome to Vicky Makes and Builds. This is part 2 of the Clementoni 1500 piece puzzle along. I have been working on this puzzle, the Woodland Fantasy Garden, and in the first video I went into quite a detailed look about how I sorted the puzzle. If you are puzzling along with this puzzle and you want to do it the same way that I've been doing it, using my videos as a guide, then have a look at part 1 first if you're just coming into this one. I've left a link in the description to that video. And if you've already started, I hope you're enjoying it or excited to start building. So this video is going to be focused on roughly the first half of the build. And as with the last video, I'm going to give you quite an in-depth look at the process I use to build it. Just how I decide what to build and when, and how I tackle the piles of pieces and that kind of thing. So again, there's going to be quite a lot of voiceover, some real-time puzzling, some time-lapse, a fair amount of talking, and it will just be slightly longer than my usual videos. So let's just dive right in with the edges. I really hope you enjoy. Okay, so as you can see, I'm separating the blue pieces because they're the obvious sky pieces, and I'm just putting them at the top. I'm not necessarily in the right order, I'm just separating them out just to make the rest of the pile a bit more easy to see and look at and see where I might go with it. What I started first was I started putting together the obvious parts of the sky. So those are the parts where there's some foliage from the trees and you can see the sky behind it. So they were pretty obvious. Some of them went down the side. And as I was going down on that left side, I noticed that there was a gradient in the sky, almost like the sun's setting or rising, and it's brighter at the bottom. So it gets darker as it goes up. So I noticed that, and I was able to use some of the lighter blues and noted that they went further down. I also put together a little bit of the tower, which is along the top edge as well. So they were the obvious bits, and then when there was just kind of blue sky left, just plain blue, I put together the rest of the border, and I really just, there was no particular methodology with that. It was literally just putting together obvious pieces, things like the stems on the mushrooms or bits of yellow leaves or bits of tree trunk or something like that. I just had little sections coming together, and then those chunks got bigger gradually until it was done. And now I've moved on to the sky. And as I say, there is, even though it's darker at the top, the gradient moves generally sort of from bottom to top. There is still a little bit of a gradient in those solid sky pieces, so I was able to utilize that to put that together. This was the hardest part to do on the edge, but it was not impossible. I was able to use that gradient, and also the shapes of these Clementoni pieces as well help. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to lift this up and move it up. And a tip I learned very recently for moving sections of puzzle, especially ones that might very easily drop apart like an edge, is to lift and also pull at the same time. And then they stay together, as opposed to just not having any tension on the pieces. They would, I would imagine, just drop apart. There we are. That's it in place. So now these pieces just finish off that edge. So let's go up there and see if I can do it. Go there. It's a tall one. Those two, that one, and that one. Yay, I've got every edge piece. Woohoo! Right, so what I'm doing here is I'm separating the pile out into slightly smaller sections to make it a little bit easier to see where to start. So it's kind of like I've got the sorted pile and I'm now micro sorting it to help me to put it together. Now, this all looked like a bit of a mishmash to me at first glance, but once I started sorting it out, I was able to put it together and not be quite so overwhelmed by all the pink. So the way I did this was to look at what was going on in the background of the piece. What else do we have in the piece aside from the pink flowers? So that little pile in the top left corner, that is pink flowers with this dark sky in the background. So I know they're going to go near the top of the dome. That one on the top right is a little bit of the dome with sky behind it. So I know that's a little bit further down. There's another pile that I pull out where there's differences in the shade of pink because some of the flowers are in kind of a shadowy area and some are in a brighter area. And so there's a pile for that too. So all I'm really doing here is I'm just separating them down just to make the build a little bit easier to get started on. Alright, so every piece I had, I've put in, which is great, but there's one thing bugging me, and that is that those bits don't join. And I should really have a piece that joins them because there is a pink flower in that piece there. And that piece must, I think, have gone into the gold scroll work pile, you know, that make up these structures. Now that's kind of the messed up pile, the one that I had a lot of missorts in. So I'm already starting to think about going for other bigger piles and just starting to organize them a bit better. Now I've built up an area that kind of encroaches on that bit. The thing is, that's quite a big pile. So what I'm going to do is really, I mean, it's early days to be gap filling, but it's the kind of thing that just sort of bugs me a little bit. So what I'm going to do, well, first of all, I'm going to attach this to the edge because I've just realized this will attach to the edge here. So here, it will go on the edge. Yay! So that's good. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to dig out the green pieces pile and see if I can find these bits here where these green leaves are. And I'm going to have a look at the sky pieces pile to see if I can find these missing bits here. And I'm gonna have a very quick look in the gold pieces pile to see if I can find any with pink flowers in and just try and fill out a few gaps here. Now, it's kind of a messy way of doing it, picking in and out of piles, but what it does is it not only builds up this area, but it also narrows down the bigger piles as well. So it's kind of like I'm sorting a wee bit as I'm going. But that's just the way I sort. I never really do a full micro sort at the beginning. There is usually crossover. I'd say I'm somewhere in the middle of a macro and a micro sorter. So, and this is the result really, that, you know, I find myself picking in and out of other piles, but that's okay. I don't mind that. I know fairly confidently where those pieces are going to be. They weren't in this pile. I'm pretty confident I know where they are going to be. So I'm going to do a little bit of gap filling now. And then I'm going to move on to, I think I'm going to pull out the little flower piles. White flowers, yellow flowers, red flowers, and just like bluebells, purple flowers. I'm gonna get on with these little piles that I have. I think that's going to be the way forward, just to get pieces in and get rid of them. I think they're going to be fairly easy to put together. So I'm going to avoid bigger piles now, do a little bit of gap filling, and then do these smaller piles, which is mostly flowers. So yeah, I'll go from there. just as an aside here, talking about the way I sort the pieces, how do I know which pile I sort into when I have a piece with two different features in? So how do I know if I have a sky and a pink flower piece, whether to put it in the sky or whether to put it in the flowers? Usually, if it's at the very start of the sort, I'm a little bit vague with it all, but if I'm quite far into the sort, what I'll usually do is opt for the pile that's the smallest. So if I've got a piece with sky and pink flower, and I have a choice of which pile to put it in, I would think, right, well, I'll put it in the pink flower pile because the sky pile's already really big and it'll find its home more easily in a smaller pile of pieces. So that's something I think about when I'm sorting as well. And it depends a lot on where I'm at in the sort, but that's usually what goes through my head when I'm thinking about doing that. All of these piles except one are actually flower pieces. So the yellow pieces go to make up the yellow tulips at the bottom. The purple pieces make up a couple of wee patches of purple flowers. The blue pieces are for the bluebells, and the white pieces are for the white flowers just beside the yellow tulips. The only one that isn't just flowers is the red pile, which is the one on the left, the biggest pile. That covers some flowers, but there's also things in there like a bird that's on the left-hand side, and the toadstools, and just other areas where there's bits of red. So the way I tackled this was to just go through the piles roughly in order of size, really. So I did yellow first, that was the smallest. Then I moved on to the bluebells, and now I'm working on the white flowers. Okay, gonna go for purple next. Now there are some purple flowers right beside these tulips, and I can actually see a piece here with yellow in. It goes there. So I'm hopeful that I can get these a bit more together. In fact, that bit goes there. So yeah, they're coming together better already. So we're gonna have a go at these purples. And do you know what else I'm gonna do just now? My little pile of dark greens that I raided for these leaves up here, I'm going to pull them out again because I have some dark green bits here underneath these yellow tulips, and I think that if I have them out, because it's not a very big pile, I think that's only going to help this whole process, and I'm pretty certain I'll have a few from the red tulips here as well. So I'm going to get those out and just have them handy to pick at to fill some gaps. Just spotted, while I was getting the green pile out, a piece of the bluebells in the bright green pile. And it attaches those two bits there. So, that was just a lucky spot. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I was just putting the remaining dark green pieces back in the box because I'd found as many as I could from that pile. And then I was looking at the red berries pile of pieces, which is the one on the bottom left, and I spotted a few that went in the red tulip area. So I'm just doing a little bit of gap filling from that red berries pile here. So I guess my next decision is what to tackle next. I'm torn between two things. Either continue with my flower flow and go with these, which go up this smaller dome. I do have a pile of those pieces, or tackle some of these orangey browns and get some of these animals together. Now, I do already have an ear just there, just at the bottom of that purple flower there. So that might help to attach that to this, and then this maybe down here where the white flower is, or the red toadstool. So that might actually, you know, fix a wee floaty patch. Whereas the blue flowers would, you know, pretty much complete all my flower pieces, most of them. But I think I am inclined to go with the deer. And another reason for that, as well as being able to attach this, another reason for that is that there are some orangey coloured pieces like down here and some of the background of these bluebells that I think might have ended up in that pile because they're a very similar shade. In fact, I can see a piece there with some purple flower in. So I think tackling that pile will also serve to do a bit of gap filling as well. And again, it's not too big a pile. Get a nice wee chunk put together. So that's my decision, and that's how I've come to it. I can use this pile to A, gap fill, B, put a little section together, and C, start to attach some of the floaty areas to the main puzzle that's coming together down here. So that's my reasoning, and that is what I'm going to do next. All right, so that's not looking too bad, but it is patchy. And I'm not sure where some of these missing pieces are. Possibly some of them are in the owl pile, maybe, or in the unsorted pile. But that's okay. But one of the things I think I might do is I've got some pieces that go in between here that are this bright green grass. And I do actually have a small pile of bright green here. And I think that that might be a good wee gap filling exercise for these deer and the foxes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull those out. As I say, there's not many, and I'll just fill in a few gaps with those. That can be another gap filling pile. And then I think what I'm going to do is the blue flowers that I was going to do initially here. These actually attach to the foxes. You can see a little bit behind the foxes here. So I'm going to pull out that pile and try and build up here and see if I can't get a little bit of that built up. Now that owl's wings comes across in front of it, so it may be that there's a gap between those two bits, but that's okay. That seems like a logical next thing to do. So I'm going to gap fill a bit here and then do those blue flowers that go up here. So I'm working from the bottom up for the most part, aside from that big bit there. This bottom bit's really filling out nicely. That is this. It's this deer, I think. Is there another animal on here that I'm not seeing? Oh my gosh, there's one down there. Oh, that confused me so much. Alright, so I found this piece. And it was clearly the head of a deer. And I'm looking at these two and I'm like, that doesn't belong to them. I just sat here looking for ages for another deer, and there is one, it's a tiny little one right down here. Oh my goodness, I didn't even notice that. Alright, so I've put together all the pieces I had in the pile with these blue flowers. And as I suspected, it was going to be a wee bit bitty because the owl's wing goes across there. But what I think I'm going to do, I'm not going to start on the owls yet. What I think I'm going to do instead is a little bit of a gap filling exercise here. So when I did these pink flowers, I had a few gaps. And I raided a couple of the other piles to fill those out. And that's looking really good now. So I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to go through my gold pieces. These ones. And pick out any of the dome pieces that I find. Which should be fairly easy. I mean, I can see one just now there. And that one even has blue flowers in it. So I'll go through all those pieces and just pick out the ones that's going to fill out this dome. And then what I might actually also do is pick out the poles, these spirals, and put together these ones and also these ones. Then what I can hopefully do is join these bluebells on, because there's a little bit of the pole there, and possibly get this attached down here. You can just see a little bit of the pole there, and there's a wee bit floating there. So I just want to just kind of get these so that they're not really floating. So again, I'm not doing like a full-on working on this pile, but I am going to gap fill from it and see if I can do those stands. I think there might be a few left over after that, because I think there's one or two of that tower in here. But what this is doing really is just kind of bringing this pile down to a bit more sort of sensible proportions. I've also got a few here in this little pile, which I know go at the top of the smaller dome, these ones, around here. And I think maybe a few along here too. So I think this is the pile I'm going to tackle next, just diving into it a bit to pick out specific areas. Try and get the stand, like the legs, the poles done on that one and this one. So here what I'm doing is I am just going through each piece and I'm separating out the poles from the rest. And what I found was that the rest of the pieces that I've left in the box there are actually for the tower on the left hand side. And I'm able to tell quite easily now which ones belong to that tower. They're just a slightly darker shade of gold. And it looks a little bit of a mess here, but there is a little bit of a method to the way I've laid these out. So what I tried to do is place the pieces for the left-hand dome on the left and the pieces for the right-hand dome on the right. I didn't always get it right, but I just found that a little bit easier, and I started the build with those flat horizontal pieces at the top of the smaller dome. One of the nice things about these pieces is, well, a couple of the nice things. Firstly, you know which way they are oriented because of the poles that go up and down. So you'd know straight away that that piece doesn't go that way, for example. So I've done that, I've kind of turned them all the right way. But another thing I've done is I've looked on the pieces at where the pole is positioned on the piece. So I've separated these because the pole is positioned more or less exactly in the middle of the pieces. And you have that on this pole going up here, and to a certain extent on this one as well. A lot of these other pieces, the pole's on one side. So it's either on the left or it's further over to the right. There's quite a lot of poles on this dome, so that is just one good way to help differentiate a bit which piece goes with what pole. So as I say, I've put these to one side and I'm hoping these are going to build up these two, just like that. Okay, so what I've really essentially done here is just finished off my sorting, which is fine. I knew I was going to come back to it later. So what I have here in this corner is the tower that's up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those and put them in this box because that's what's remaining in here. And these are just a few leftovers that I had from other piles. So I'm going to just put these in there. Because I'm not coming to that yet. It'll probably be one of the last things I do, the tower. So that has pretty much got a box to itself now. This is still a fairly big pile, but these are mostly just bits of tree. And I think that when I come to these, which will more than likely be last, I'll be able to do a little bit of micro sorting on them. There's more, some of the trees have more yellowy leaves, some different shades of green. So I'm sure that I'll be able to work with that, but not until later. So that's those. And then what I've got here is, so over on the left here, the reason I put those over there is because there's some bits of yellow and orange sky background. These are the daisies that I'm going to use in just a second to gap fill at the bottom here. These are the ones that I've pulled out that belong to either this or this. I noticed either some of the spirals or some of the dome at the top. With a lot of the pieces, it was only just kind of the very edge. It took a little bit of spotting. But because I'm a bit more used to the puzzle now, and I know it a little better, I was able just to identify pieces more easily, which is why I've kind of gone on a bit of a more thorough sort here. So those two I'm going to leave here because I'm going to work on them next. This one I'm also leaving here because this is a pile of pieces where when I picked it up, I knew where it went. So for example, that is a piece that's part of the toadstool down here. It goes there. And for example, that is a piece that has some of this bluebell stem, and that goes in there, just there. So that's just kind of pieces that I knew went where they went. So I've got a kind of a pile there, which I'm also going to work on next. This is a new pile. This is tree trunks. As I've been building up various wee bits, I've noticed that there are actually quite a few knotty tree trunks in this puzzle. There's one there, there's one there, that's quite big, that one. So I actually separated those out. Felt like there was enough pieces to do that. So that's going to go in one of the boxes. I'll just pop it to one side for now. These ones here is just a little pile. These can be added to my trees, but with blue sky in the background pile. So I already have an existing pile for that. And these ones, a lot of these ones actually have the antlers on of the deer just here. But I could tell what they belong to because there's this kind of brown soily mound here. And I just could identify the colour. I've already started a little bit of that here. And as I say, I could see some of the antlers of the deer. So I put those there because, similar to this pile really, I was just able to identify where they went. So I'm going to work on these little piles now, fill in some gaps in these, fill in some gaps down here with the daisies, fill in some gaps where I know I've got some missing, and here as well. And that's what I'm about to do just now, just a little bit of gap filling. Okay, so I've done some gap filling. We've got these daisies in. And I actually raided the berries pile a little bit to get those out. There were a few with daisies in the red berries pile, so that was good. That filled in a few there, and also over here. And I put my leftovers in, which filled out a few of the deer and the foxes and a few wee bits around here. Managed to fill out this toadstool a little bit more. The poles are now just a bit more attached to the top, so that kind of the top and bottom of the puzzle is more attached here. So those pieces that I pulled out filled out a good bit there, and also a little bit here at the bottom. Then I also filled in some of these background sky pieces here. So that's worked really well. Now, I was looking at the puzzle and trying to gauge how much I'd done. Couldn't really tell if I'd done about half of it. And I was hoping to kind of finish this video at the halfway point. So I've done a quick count up, and I counted, if I've counted accurately, I counted 735 pieces in here. So I'm almost at the halfway point. But I think I could do a little bit more before I start the big piles like the owls and the sky and that tower up there, which are kind of the main parts that I have left. So what I thought I'd do before I finished was tackle this pile here, which is the ones I've just pulled out, the new pile of trees, like tree trunks. Now, I'll show you again. There's a big tree trunk here and here, and there's a fairly big one here, and there's kind of little bits around there. And I actually think, again, that will fill out some gaps nicely. Fill out this little bit here, and a wee bit here between the edge and this pole. And there aren't too many. I think that would probably take me to about the halfway point. So again, a little bit of gap filling here with those tree trunks. I'm just going to do those, and then I'm going to finish it there. Alright, so that's me at about the halfway mark. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. So just by way of a summary, once I'd sorted, I have built the following parts of the puzzle. The edge, the pink flowers and the top of the larger dome, the flowers, toadstools and bird and berries along the bottom, the deer and foxes and some other orange pieces, the smaller dome and flowers on there, the golden spiral poles, and some tree trunks, as well as sorting through the rest of my unsorted pile. And now the piles of pieces that remain are the larger ones, owls, sky, leaves, and that tower on the left. And I think I could probably do that in one more video on this. So this will end up being like a 3-part puzzle along series. So if you're puzzling along with me, I would love to hear your thoughts on this puzzle. How are you finding it? Are you using my videos as a guide, or are you doing it your own way? What have been your most enjoyable and most challenging parts so far? I would love to know what you think. Don't forget you can share your progress over in my Discord server. The invite link for that is in the description. If it's expired, let me know in a comment and I'll renew it for you. Lots of people have been sharing their progress over there, and in some cases already finished it. It's been so interesting to see how differently everybody has approached it. And on the subject of pictures, at the end of my final video on this puzzle, I would love to pop up a wee montage of your pictures. So, to everyone who has been photographing their progress as they puzzle along, would you be okay with me including your pictures in my next video on this? If you would, please send them to me via email. My email address is in the description. Tell me if you are okay with me putting your name next to the picture and what name you'd like me to put. And just pop something in the subject line just along the lines of Woodland Fantasy Garden pics or something like that. I think that would be a really lovely thing to put at the end of the final video on this puzzle. So that's it. I'm going to leave it there. Look out for part 3 on this series coming soon. If you are just coming at these videos now and it's a later point, don't worry, you can still puzzle along. These videos are going to stay up on YouTube. There are links in the description for this puzzle. They are Amazon associate links. If you buy your puzzles on Amazon anyway and you want to buy the puzzle, do consider using those links. It just all helps me and the channel. But definitely, you know, if you come in at this at a later point and you still want to join in, please do. And the channel on the Discord server will stay up there as well. So if you want to share pictures, you can do that whenever you want to. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. And I will just say happy puzzling and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!